I want you just to think for a few moments about what's going on inside you and what has been going on inside you over the last few days, the last few weeks. What sort of kind of reactions and emotions and feelings and thoughts have there been? And I want you to imagine that if your internal world was a place, was a location, what sort of place or location would it be? Would it be one of those beautiful deserted islands with a beach hut and the blue sky and the blue seas and just the peaceful lap of the water up the sand? Is that what it's like to be inside you? Or is it more like a war zone, like some of the war zone places of the world, and you think actually your internal life is a bit like that? Or is it your favourite restaurant, hanging out with your friends and that kind of buzz and happiness? Is that what it's like to be inside you? Or is it like the New Year's sales in a clothes shop where, you know, when the clothes are kind of off the racks and everyone's trying to grab the thing that they want and there's just kind of chaos there? What's it like to be inside you? Because the thing that I've noticed is that what's going on inside people, you can predict the quality of their life from that. So if someone said to you, you know, my internal world, it's a bit like Afghanistan at the moment, you could probably predict what it's like to be in their family or to be a work colleague or to be their friend. If somebody said it's just this ocean of peace and serenity sitting on a beach and it's just so lovely, you could probably predict what it's like to be in their family, to be a colleague. That our internal world can predict the quality of our life. Now, if you're someone who you're on that beautiful beach inside and your life's full of serenity and full of peace and it's full of strength and it's full of joy, then you could probably switch off right now and go and do something else more useful. But if inside you know sometimes it's not how you want it to be, and you want to move towards more joy and strength and life, then you might find the next few minutes really, really helpful. And particularly you might find helpful a story of Jesus, which you find in Luke chapter 10 verse 38 to 42. And in this story, Jesus has been on a long journey. He's been travelling, he's hungry and he's weary, and two sisters welcome him into their home. Two sisters, Mary and Martha, they welcome Jesus into their home. They show him hospitality. And what's interesting is the two sisters then do two completely different things. And so you find Martha welcomes him into a home, and Martha starts heading over to the kitchen and she starts sorting out food and she starts preparing to welcome Jesus. Whereas Mary does the opposite thing. Mary goes and sits at the feet of Jesus. Now that's a bit strange in my culture, but essentially what that means is she's paying attention to Jesus. She's sitting with Jesus. She's listening to Jesus. And not surprisingly, Martha, who's in the kitchen, it gets really upset. And actually what happens is so significant that she steps over all sorts of cultural boundaries. So she's a female, she's in the kitchen, she's working really hard, and Jesus is a Jewish kind of rabbi who's speaking in the living room. And she steps over the boundary where she becomes rude to the guest. She, as a woman helping in the kitchen, steps over a boundary and speaks to this male Jewish teacher, and she tells him off. She does what you're not supposed to do. So significant is her upset that she tells Jesus off. She tells Jesus off for encouraging what Mary's doing. She tells Jesus off because Mary's not helping her. And Jesus looks at Mary, who's doing nothing, and he looks at Martha, who's doing everything in the kitchen. And the strange thing is Jesus sides with Mary. He looks at Mary and he says, Mary's discovered the better thing. In a way that almost makes no sense. Why would you support the person who's doing nothing compared to the person who's doing everything? Listen to what the verse says. It says Martha, who's in the kitchen, she's distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. And she comes to Jesus and she said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come to me. Jesus said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered that, and it's not going to be taken away from her. See, the clue to the story is about what's going on inside of Martha. Listen to a couple of these words and have a think about what do you think it was like to be inside Martha. It says she's distracted by all the preparation, all the things she's got to do. She's distracted by it. Jesus says that she's worried and upset by many things. Not just one thing, but many things are making her worried. They're making her upset. And when she complains, she says to Jesus, Lord, don't you care? She's like, don't you care? Can't you see how unfair it is? It's like she's crying out for recognition. Can you not see what I'm doing? She's doing loads of stuff, but she's insecure perhaps. She wants to be noticed, and so she cries out to Jesus. What do you think it's like to be inside Martha? That kind of distraction. Worried, upset about many, many things. Maybe driven by jealousy. Maybe there's an insecurity, a desire for recognition. For me, it seems like just kind of a tornado. That's probably how I describe Martha as I read the story. Just a tornado of drives and desires. There's anxiety there. There's upset. There's distraction. There's insecurity, a desire for recognition. And they're all driving her to affect her experience and a quality of life with Jesus right there with her. I don't know if you saw this video on Facebook a few months ago, and the video came up on my stream, and the video was this kind of business guy who's going to work in the morning, and it's a busy street, and he's walking past everybody and moving past, and eventually he gets a takeaway coffee from a stand on the sidewalk, and he picks up the coffee, he continues to walk, moving around the people who are coming back and forth, and then he comes to this building, and he walks around the corner, and someone comes the other way, knocks him, and he covers coffee all over his white shirt. And then the video stops, and a question comes up, which is, why has he got coffee stain on his shirt? And you initially think, well, it's because that woman's bumped into him. That's why he's a coffee stain on his shirt. And then the next slide of the video comes up and says, the reason that there's a coffee stain on his shirt is because there was coffee in his cup. That if he had water in his cup, then he would have got water on himself. That whatever's in your cup, when you go through the bumps of life, that's actually what you get all over you and all over other people. And what Jesus is saying to Martha is, what's in your cup is anxiety and upset and distraction and lack of focus and kind of chaos and insecurity and jealousy. That's what's in your cup. So when you come up and bump against your sister or you bump against something else, that's what actually comes out. So when people bump up against you and your family, maybe in your workplace, in your church, wherever you are, when people bump up against you, what comes out of the cup? Because if you're like me, you'll blame the other people. You say, well, they've made me angry, they've wound me up. But what Jesus is saying here to Mary and to Martha is what's in your cup, that's actually what comes out. And the sad thing about Martha's story here is she's distracted by so many things that she's missing Jesus. That she's got Jesus right there in her presence. I mean, can you imagine the physical presence of Jesus and you welcome him into your home and she completely misses it because she's distracted? And I think the key to living a better quality of life, I think the key to living a more peaceful existence is about living from the inside out. And I think what Martha's doing here gives us the clue to how to experience more of that in our lives, so that when we bump up against people, our anger and our upset and our anxiety doesn't all spill out because we have better things in our cup. And what Mary's doing here is she's paying attention to the presence of Jesus. And in my experience, when you pay attention on a regular basis to the presence of Jesus, that makes all the difference to what's in your cup. And so if you're someone with this kind of image of what's going on inside you, and it's not that peaceful scene on a beach, it's maybe something else, I want to suggest a very simple practice, that you adopt Mary's perspective, that you pay attention to the presence of Jesus. And I understand that can be really difficult with all sorts of demands and everything going on. And so I just want to invite you maybe to take time every single day, the same time every day. Maybe to set an alarm on your phone for 12 o'clock at lunchtime or 6 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whatever time works for you. To set an alarm, for that alarm to go off. And when that goes off, I want to encourage you to give yourself 5 minutes to pay attention to the presence of Jesus. And that just means just being still. Maybe just being still for a moment, just for 5 minutes. Just saying, thank you, Jesus. Become aware of where you are. Become aware of the good things in your life. Just for 5 minutes to say, thank you, Jesus. just pay attention to the presence of Jesus. And what I've found is that when I do that, there's a bit less rubbish in my cup, and a bit more joy, and a bit more peace. And I pray that that may be your experience as well through this week, that you may give time to pay attention to the presence of Jesus.